Good morning, classmates. We are Group 3 and today we will be discussing about classification and division paragraphs. These are the objectives for this lesson. We will be able to understand the definitions of each modes of paragraph development, identify the characteristics, structures, and examples of each paragraph, and identify the transition words used and learn how to use them. We will also learn how to write each paragraph and distinguish the comparisons between the two. When dividing and classifying things to make your writing more orderly and systemized, consider following these principles: consistency, exclusiveness, and completeness. For consistency, it is characterized by having parallel similarities in these divisions you make in your writing. So your topics or subjects must be aligned to how are you going to form your paragraph. For exclusiveness, it means that there should be no overlapping between or among the items divided and classified together. So your subjects must be aligned to only one topic. You should not include any more subjects that will align to other topics and will have different types of categories too. And in completeness, it means that no important part must be omitted from the writing. Without these processes aimed at systemizing, there would be no point of comparison for us to study the world. We would have no way of predicting or preparing for impending future unknown experience.
Classification as a mode of paragraph development is the same as division. It is both organizing your paragraph. However, it differs on how you organize it. In classification, you organize them by grouping to separate ideas into a group of or on the basis of their similarities. The scattered ideas are grouped into one because of their similarities. That is how you classify or organize the paragraph when using classification as a mode of paragraph development. Now next, the characteristics of classification paragraph. When you want to use classification as a mode of paragraph development, you have first to define the class or the categories. You have to explain it further on what it is about. And next is you have to assign the elements. The elements should be based on their similarities. Next is it defines a relationship between the classes. So the classes or the main ideas, it should be obviously stated on how it was related, on what are their similarities. That is how you write the classification paragraph. Next is it determines the semantic relationship between the concepts and determines the elements that fall under the concepts. So in writing a paragraph, you can also just write different you can also write one or more concepts, but every concept should follow their elements. And the concepts in that paragraph, the two concepts, for example, in that paragraph, should be stated what their similarity is all about. And in each concepts, the elements that follow with that concept should also be explained on how it was related and how it was assigned in that particular concepts. So I hope it was understandable. Next is the guidelines. To form the paragraph, first and foremost, topic sentence. Topic sentence is the gist of the paragraph. It is like you are giving a clue on what your paragraph is all about. Next is it should discuss each of the categories one at a time. When classifying a paragraph, you have to explain each category first. You cannot explain it by as a whole or all together. That is not how you classify the paragraph. You should explain it one by one. Next is when you already have thought of categories in your paragraph, you have to arrange it in logical order. Next is conclusion. In conclusion, you have to restate the main point of your paragraph. That is how you write the conclusion. And that is the last part of writing a conclusion paragraph.
Let's talk about structure of classification paragraph. A classification paragraph generally has the following structure: topic sentence, category 1, category 2, category 3, and concluding statement. This is the structure you need to consider when writing a paragraph. So, what is a topic sentence? It is very important in your paragraph because topic sentence is a sentence that summarizes the main idea of a paragraph. Now, how about the three categories? In categories contains divided items that are things you want to tell the reader, starting with category 1, 2, and 3. And each category must include definitions, examples, explanations, and details. And lastly, concluding statement. It is necessary to your paragraph because the concluding statement indicates that you are bringing closure to a paragraph.
Here I would like to explain about on how to form a classification paragraph. The first point we got, what should you do or what should we do on forming a classification? The first is determine the purpose of your classification. Are you tending to inform your reader about the differences in the categories to persuade him or her that one category is superior than others? Number 2 is determine the categories, making sure that there is no overlap in the categories. Make sure that a certain group won't fit into more than one category. And then third, determine the differentiating characteristic of your categories. Lastly, outline your essay, making sure that you discuss the same topic for each class or category, that you discuss them in the same order. The next point we got, what we should not do in forming classification. Number 1, avoid oversimplification. Be careful not to stereotype or misrepresent the subjects of your classification. Number 2, we got avoid overlapping categories. Make sure your types fit into one only category. For example, you wouldn't want to classify responses to stress as self-destructive or destructive to others and annoying, because knowing responses could be either self-destructive or destructive to others. And lastly, avoid missing categories. Make sure all your categories are accounted for all the types of your subject. For example, it would be accurate to classify horses as only about loose quarter horses or thoroughbreds, because there are many other types of horses such as palominas, solid stales, and so on.
Example of a classification paragraph. There are two common types of procrastination: the perfectionist procrastination and the warrior procrastination. Those who create concrete plans early but fear that they might not be able to perform it perfectly belongs to the perfectionist procrastination. Those who don't start their tasks yet due to indecisiveness and lack of confidence belong to the warrior. Either of the two, procrastination is proven to be the temporary and can be overcome.
Transition words are important in classification paragraph. It tells when you are moving from one category to another. For example, the first group, the last group, the first type, the second type. We can also indicate which categories you think are more important than others. For example, the most or the least. important group. There are also many transition words you can use, like the next part, one kind, another kind, one way, another way, the first, the second, the third, etc.
Before we proceed on to this subject, which is about division, we first have to explore the question, what is division? Now, division, it is the process of separation or the separation of a group or class of people, thing or idea into categories that you or we can establish. Now, in division, a writer may divide a single subject into its component parts, just like how a baker can divide a pie into smaller, more servable pieces. Now, in division, it works hand in hand with analysis wherein one breaks down a single concept or a topic into its smaller constituent parts in order to examine each of the components to clarify the meaning of the topic itself or the whole entire thing. For example, a writer may divide the components of a car into different pieces, such as the wheel, the engine, the material, or its amenities such as the color, the design, the interior design, or the gadgets and etc. In order to prove a point or demonstrate that the specific car, is superior in most aspects than other expand of cars per se. Moving on to the characteristic of a division paragraph. In division paragraph, it looks on how one big subject or idea can be broken down into several smaller pieces so that it may become more digestible or easier to comprehend. And also in division, it also classifies a subject, and it is then divided further into sub-related parts or points so that it may become easy to memorize and also retain.
Now I have some tips on how to write a division paragraph properly. We have some guidelines to form the paragraph. First, it should begin with a topic sentence that introduces the subject of the paragraph. And it should discuss each of the categories one at a time. And it should be arranged in a logical order. Lastly, it should end with a concluding statement that reinforces the main point stated in that topic.
Division structure. Division structure contains topic sentence, categories, and concluding statement. In topic sentence, it should identify what is to be divided and what categories to use in paragraph. In categories, it contains divided items or things that you want to tell the readers. You can start with category 1, category 2, category 3, and etc. Each category must include explanations, examples, or details in order to distinguish from the other categories. And in concluding statement, we should write a conclusion that restates the topic sentence and basically sums up what the reader wants to know or remember about your graph.
To form a division paragraph, we should choose a subject or topic that can be divided into groups, one that can be broken down into components or parts. You should list the component parts of your subject, making sure there is no overlap in the parts. Lastly, if you are writing an essay, decide how you will divide your subjects into paragraphs. If there are many parts of the subject, see whether the part can be divided into large categories that will be discussed in the paragraph.
Here is an example of a division paragraph. The topic sentence here in the paragraph is the first sentence, which is 3 reasons why I don't have a credit card. With this topic sentence, the writer tries to define the 3 reasons why he or she does not have a credit card. And and the words first reason, second reason, and third reason in the paragraph are called transition signals that introduces each category. Then the sentences after the transition signals are the categories, which shows the reasons why the writer doesn't have a credit card. Last is the concluding statement that is found in the last sentence of the paragraph. The concluding statement which restates the topic sentence.
Transition words used for division paragraph. For a sequence, we have afterward, at last, at the same time, at this point, by this time, eventually, finally, first, second, third, etc. In the end, meanwhile, next, and soon after. For the additional, we have also, as a matter of fact, besides, for instance, in addition, in fact, likewise, moreover, and similarly.
To give you an idea of what is the difference between classification and division, let me show you some illustrations. For example, in division, let's have students as our subject. The teacher asked the class president to separate the class into two according to their sex. In this case, we are dividing the students into categories, which are males and females, since those are the two sexes. The students are the subject or the group, which is needed to be divided into categories, and the categories are the sexes, which are the male and the female. So basically, it is dividing groups into parts. For classification, on the other hand, let's use the same example we had for division. So we had students and divided them by their sex into males and females. Here we have a group of students' names. So now we can say that we have to classify or put these individual people according to which categories they belong. So the difference between them is that in classification, it deals with and defines a core notion and examines the subcategories of that issue, while in division, it is reliably utilized in identifying subsystems or subclassifications of one whole big topic or item. For classification, contrasting and comparing subjects and at the same time sorting individual items or topics into categories based on their functions. In division, it identifies the components or subsystems of anything in relation to the whole. In classification, it categorizes persons, organisms, things, or concepts, depending on the issue. The topic phrase explains what is to be classed as well as the categories that will be utilized. In division, when dividing, start with a single central theme and divide it down into several components. To sum it all up, classification is placing individuals into already made or established categories. In other words, finding the common denominators or groups where each individual belongs. In division, it is separating groups into categories, breaking ideas into parts. The structure of both classification and division paragraphs must have a catchy topic sentence that will hook your reader. Categories are explained in details, and lastly, the concluding statement where you restate your thesis statement and three main points. It is important for us to use transition words to let the readers know when we are going to move on to the next subject. And lastly, the similarity between both paragraphs is that they are to separate and organize subjects into parts and are explained in details to better understand the topic.